Welcome to the She is a Nourished Mom podcast, where we talk about all things self-care, motherhood, and faith for the Christian mom who wants to transition from worn out to winning as the mom and woman God called her to be. I'm your host, Dr. LaToya Wiggins, but please just call me LaToya. I just want to be your mommy friend and sister in Christ as I teach you how to no longer feel depleted, but how to develop healthy habits to be nourished, renewed, and rejuvenated with biblical principles that bring peace instead of self-pity. Now let's get nourished together. Hey mamas, welcome back to part 2 of our conversation on parenting children with special needs. In this episode, you're going to hear from Shameka Brown and Cherelle Jeudy. You're going to learn more about their experience as moms with a child who has special needs and what motivated them to start showing up for themselves so they can be the best moms they can be to help their children and families thrive no matter what. Stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
So my story, I've been in the field for Micah's 8, so I'm 40. So for 32 years, all I knew was special education. I've been in every system in my state. I was a service coordinator. I helped write IFSPs. I helped diagnose. I've helped to go into classrooms and observe. That was my educator hat. And then I've always been with my kids. So when I had my daughter, I was in every classroom with her because I was going to school to be a teacher. Then she went on off. And then when my other son came, we used the same people. So I've always been in the field. I'm always able, it's like I always had a gift to where I could diagnose before diagnosing. I could always, like, I could see, right? And so for Micah, I had Micah. So I had Micah on a Thursday, Friday night. The next morning after I had Micah, my grandmother passed away. And I was in the same hospital. I went up to see, I was in my hospital room and my mom could kind of say, your grandmother's not answering the phone. Can you have the nurse to take you up to check on your grandmother? So I just had a C-section, had Micah resting, was scrolled up to the room, and my grandmother had died. So I was the first one to walk in and see them trying to bring her back. From that point on, it just was a lot. We've had a lot of deaths in our family, like close ones. And so I would always say there's just something different about Micah. Like he was a little quieter. He got a little angry sometimes, but he's always been outspoken. So I was what you said, Angela. Like they're just like you can't help but to love him. One lady used to tell me he was going to be my bunny rabbit. He was busy, but there was something special about him. And so he started going to pre-K, and he didn't start showing like he was always busy, but he's a boy, right? And so my husband always say, don't stop diagnosing him. Stop diagnosing him. He was always just busy. Now we already have Micaiah and Maurice, so they're all for your difference. So, and but Micah was just he would. It took some time, a little time to process. So Micah was in preschool, and the last year before we got into the pandemic, he started showing anger and started like not listening. And all of a sudden, they would say, "Oh, he was throwing chairs at the teachers," and I'm like, mind you, we're a faith-based home. There's no drinking, there's no smoking, all these things. But during this process, I'm in school to get my infant mental health, and I'm reading these stories about how what you talked about. I think Cherelle earlier about it's not just the diagnoses are not just medical, but what you said, Angela, is mental health, it's the environmental factors, it's the foods that we eat. There's a lot of things that we as women, but not only that, either as educators, did not know. And so it just was a lot. He was crying a lot. He didn't like school. He was reading like so fast. He just started to regress. And I'm like, nah, something's not right. Like there has to be like this is just not. And then me knowing my background of me sitting in a room with parents at IFSP meetings, IEP meetings, and encouraging moms and telling moms, it's going to be okay, and let's do X, Y, and Z. The Lord was like, okay, who gonna tell you? Like, and so we went to the doctor. So the teachers did some paperwork on him. Like he was having rough times. Then we got into kindergarten. So now that was just pre-K. Kindergarten, we were online. It was rough. He cried every day. He wouldn't get online. He didn't understand. Then he got into the kindergarten classroom. Him and the teacher did not work. It was just he refused to do anything. And by this time, I'm like, okay, no, like there has to be more because right. I always say my favorite something behavior has meaning. So he's not just bad. He's not just this. He's trying to tell us something. So then, in our area, there was no one. So there was a year-long waiting list for a developmental pediatrician. So I couldn't wait because he's literally in kindergarten, and this is not. He's unhappy. He's crying. He doesn't want to get up. He's wetting himself. He's just acting out. So my husband and my doctor was like, I know a lady that you can reach out to. She does it, and she probably can get you in. So I called the lady, but guess what happened? She didn't take our insurance, so we had to pay out of pocket. I'm like, look, my son is not happy. I need to know what's going on. He doesn't just need a whooping. He doesn't just need a timeout. Like, it's not working. Like you give him behavior, you give him a timeout, and he go do the same thing over again. You tell him to do something, he wasn't able to process. He was very like, we'll be in the store here. So oh, she's fat. Like she'll just say anything out of the blue. And I'm like, no, like there's something going on. And so we went through the whole process. It was hard. Like for the first time in my life, felt what a parent felt when after being told your child has a diagnosis. It was like it just crushes you. And the thing about it is, and my husband's like, but you've been doing this for so long. You've helped so many families. I'm like, but I'm not the professional right now, I'm the mom. I can feel all these things about what about this? Or did I do this? Was it because I was stressed and depressed? Or did all of these our environments about of us losing all these people, like the COVID? Like you have all these stories that you tell yourself on why this happened. But guess what? We can't do that. Like literally life happens. So once we figured it out, I began to pull out what I did with what I do with parents as a developmental therapist. What I go out and do, I begin to say, okay, fit this into my home. I begin to tell myself when he throw a fit, yell, okay, it's not you. Something's going on. Most of the times it's when he's tired, when he's overwhelmed, when he can't communicate, tell you what's going on. And so that's how we begin to do the process. And then, as a parent, and I'm pretty sure it was tough because people was just your family members and those around you would always just like, can you make him sit down? Won't he just be quiet? I'm like, no. And for a while it was like, we're just not going to go anywhere. But I'm like, no. Because as you said, it's not right because they didn't ask to be this way. But I always tell parents, right, as an educator, like, you are the right parent for the job. God knew, like, this is what I tell people all the time. God knew that you can have this gift. So this gift is to you to teach something. Like you said, Miss Angela, they teach us something. They make us remember something. There's so much that they teach us, but it's us realizing who cares what the outside world thinks? Who cares what your girlfriend thinks because you can't go here with them? Who cares? It's just realizing that we are their foundation. We're there to support them. And if we don't, which is why I'm big on self care, we can't help them. We can't show up. We can't do the job. So for me, it's always literally, God, what am I supposed to do? I don't want, because textbooks does not teach on how to be a parent with a child with these. We can read all the books, but it's you I know it, I learned it, but it's we have to gift it according to our homes. What might work for me won't work for the next mother because our children are uniquely designed. They're not just because this child has autism and that child has autism, they don't have the same kind of thing. But the world is so quick to categorize and put, oh, you go over here, you go over there, but we all have different learning styles. And as a parent, I tell myself all the time, some days gonna be great. Today, before I got on here, he cried because he wanted to wear a suit to his brother's concert. I told my husband, let him put on that suit. We look, your son gonna be late. I don't care about no suit. Some days he wear Crocs. Some days he wears shorts. Some days he wears. Look, he get to school. He get his lesson. Is it bothering me? No. Is it bothering him? No. So that's what we have to remember. It does not matter what it's like to somebody else. If you're happy, your house is happy, and that child is developing and doing what needs to be done, hey, see you later. That's how I see it.
Mic drop. Mic drop.
That is a definite period.
Right. I love everything that you mentioned. I wanted to backtrack on one thing. So my middle son, I always say he was the very hyper one. When you would talk about behavioral problems, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I need Shameka. I need all these tips. And he was recently, I finally got him diagnosed with ADHD. I knew he had it. It was always one of those things. His is very mild. So it was, one of those things like, because I see other kids and they about the same old words, but it's not about other kids. I need to make sure my child is thriving, and academically he's doing extremely well. He's in kindergarten, but I've always been watching him. We got in pre-K, now kindergarten. I'm always waiting for the teacher, like, let me see what's going on. And thank goodness he's doing well academically, but the behavior, piece and the focus, is an issue. So, it seemed like it had been getting worse lately. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and be a mom, because you had some family members just like, oh, Jalen is just Jalen, and I want my baby to thrive. So let me
That's the key.
see
Mm-hmm.
if he truly does have it. I'm not trying to put a diagnosis on my child,
No,
but if he does
you want
need
to
help,
equip.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
do what we need to do, So we just started medication recently. That medication he on right now ain't working. Look, I just talked to the doctor today, but it's that thing, we're figuring things out. But that just really made, oh, that's what I was trying to get back to when you said, like, when you found out the diagnosis. In my head, I pretty much already figured he had it, and even just getting the official diagnosis.
It hit you.
What did
It
I
hit
do
you.
wrong? It's my fault. I know, daggone well. I already knew about these diagnoses. I knew about ADHD. I knew it was nothing that I did.
Yeah.
And still I was on Google.
I,
What are the
see,
causes?
look, still, and not
LaToya,
only
you
that,
wasn't drinking and smoking while you were pregnant and most of the other stuff. It's
exactly.
just no
See,
reason. Why are you beating yourself up? Same thing. I've dealt with my mental health issues, and I've been seeing a therapist this year. Same thing, thinking maybe it's because I did something. LaToya, you ain't do nothing, And it just, yeah, we're always beating ourselves up. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because like, you are the expert, you are the parenting expert. You knew all of that, but you still question, what did you do wrong, knowing
like,
that
and
you did
then
not.
and not only that, because they're our babies, right? They came,
Mm-hmm.
we learned through all these books that they came from us and they heard everything, but they're still like, we don't. The thing I always tell myself too, and think of, we don't control it. Like, we're gifted with this gift to help develop, but we're still not in control. We're all women of faith. Who has the last say? What
Mm-hmm.
does the word say? What does God say? And I pray every time before I make a decision. God, I don't want to live in fear. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to live in what the statistics say about our black and brown kids, especially boys.
Yeah.
Boys are we got all these things to think about. So yeah.
Yes. And I love that you also mentioned, whether it's ADHD, autism. I've definitely always heard that with autism, but even with Angela's son having cerebral palsy, Cherelle's going to share with you all a little bit about her son in a moment. The diagnosis that they have is a wide range. So, from mild to severe, how, I hate this, and I know a lot of other people do sometimes when it comes to somebody who has autism. They're like, oh, he doesn't look like he has autism. There is no look. Some people do have a certain look for certain, diagnosis, certain health conditions. Everything does not look the same. Or you may look at somebody and think, oh, they can't do XYZ, and they're like more intelligent than you. It ranges from their cognition, behavior,
Hmm.
the mental, the physical, if they have disabilities. All those things are on a very wide spectrum. So like you said, you can have a group of children all in the same room. Everybody has the same exact diagnosis. Each one of them have different abilities and needs. So it's not going to, parenting isn't going to look the same for each mom. What we can do is build that community, to build, had the resources I mentioned, like you mentioned, the health insurance issue. I know there are a lot of moms who, through experience, which I'm sure you all have had that experience, through experience, you have had to find the tools and resources to get certain things that your child need, whether it's medication or equipment, if it's a physical disability, whatever. And these are the type of things, while, we can connect to, just help each other out. What worked for this parent may work for you. What may work for her doesn't work for you, and so on. So it is good for everybody to connect with each other, but just know that it's not going to look the same for each and every one of us. Just like a mom, period. If you don't have a child with special needs, parenting is still different for each and every last one of us. The way we take care of ourselves is different. How you want to take care of yourself ain't going to work for me, and vice versa. So we just really have to figure out what works for us. We have to see what works for our child. I love that you mentioned certain things. It's like, why do we care? So okay, your child want to put on a suit, okay, let him put on a suit. Like I said, he's happy. That was the main thing I wanted to repeat back what you said. As long as you're happy, your child is happy, everybody in your home is happy, forget everybody else. That's their business if they have a problem. My home is happy, my child is happy, life is good.
Amen.
All right, Cherelle, Miss Judy, it is time for you to share about your story and about Joel, right? Joel. I want to almost say Noel, confusing him with
It's some people say Joel. It's Joel. We call him Joel, but yeah, Joel,
I don't know
little
why I thought you
Joel.
actually said Joel before. Okay, so Joel.
Some people call him that. It's fine.
Maybe
It
that's
doesn't
why.
matter. Say potato. It's the same. So our journey actually started when I was still pregnant with him. So when I was pregnant, you know how you have these prenatal tests and everything. And they were like, Miss Judy, it's, a very high chance that your child has Down syndrome. And in previous pregnancies, I've heard that, so I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, this is probably the same thing, right? And what was so crazy, the first solution that the doctor had for me was termination. And I was like, my husband was like, no, we're not going to do it. So then we had to go for the ultrasound just to check and see if he had any of the features, that he may have Down syndrome. And they were like, well, he has, a hole in his heart, that is pretty consistent with children with Down syndrome. And his solution was termination. And then we went to a what do you call him? A genetics doctor. I'll just call him that. And I said, I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm not terminating. Please don't even give me that solution, So she was like, okay, that was the end of it. But, we had family members who were saying the same thing. Like, he's going to have all these issues, maybe the best solution is termination. I was like, no, we're not going to abort him. So when did we find out that Joe had Down syndrome? I knew right away when he came out that he had it. He didn't get officially diagnosed, but I could tell like around his eyes, he had the extra, they have the extra flap over their eyes. And I was like, oh yeah, he has it. But he was so cute. I was like, and then, that mama bear instinct immediately kicked in for Joel. And I just became very protective. However, I did have a mourning period. Like I was grieving that my child, had to go through this. Like I remember praying, I had people praying like, Lord, why, and the scripture that one of my sisters in Christ gave me was that Joel is fearfully and wonderfully made. Just keep speaking that over him. So I was like, while I'm in my mourning period, I was grieving because I was just like, I didn't know what kind of life he was going to have, what quality of life he was going to have. And then like a week after we brought him home, he started like, he couldn't keep his food down. And so we had to, take him to the hospital. They thought he had a bowel obstruction in his bowels, and found out he has a disease that is his colon wasn't functioning at all. So we had to go through that, and that was life-threatening. Down syndrome is not life-threatening, but what his physical condition, that was life-threatening. The hole in his heart, that was life-threatening, and that put that into perspective. And I was just like, just praying, Lord, I just want him to be okay. So as you know, we were in the hospital, I had people praying for him. We left home with so many diagnoses. He had, Down syndrome was confirmed, which I already knew. He had the disease in his bowels. He had bleeding on his brains. He had a hole in his heart. And then he developed, because of the PICC line, he developed a blood clot in his leg. So, we was just like, oh, poor Joel. Like, what kind of, I'm just thinking, what kind of quality of life is he going to have? And it just puts things into perspective, what really matters. And it was no longer Down syndrome. At that point, it was just like, okay, my child has Down syndrome, but what about this? So, we just prayed over him. Honestly, we prayed over Joel. We had everybody praying for him consistently. Like, we had people like on prayer, prayer circles, just continuously praying for him, and praying for me, praying for my husband, because that was difficult. And he finally stabilized. And then, he did have to have his colon removed, and that happened during the pandemic. So, just taking care of him and making sure that he was good, making sure that my other children were good, making sure everybody's good. It really did take a toll on me taking care of myself. Like, I just didn't matter at all. Like, I need to make sure everybody's good. And I was still working. I was homeschooling at the time. It was just a lot that I was doing. And I just put my self-care on the back burner. Even when we did the conference, LaToya, I was just like on autopilot. Like, maybe people didn't notice that, but it was just like I needed to, just be there for others, and I really wasn't showing up for myself. So, it's hit I hit a wall. I started to develop like anxiety, couldn't sleep, started having panic attacks. I'm a believer, like, what is going on? Like, and the root of anxiety, of course, is biological, but it's fear. Like, I was dealing with a lot of fear, like, of the unknown. And I had to pause. I did go back to school. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did decide to go back to school, and that on my plate. I walked the stage, thank God, in December, but I was just like, I could not even remember that day. I was so tired, and I was like, okay, time for me to look for work. And the Lord was like, no, you're going to sit down. And that's what I did. Like, the last couple months, I was just like, I did nothing. Like, I worked, of course. The boys, are in school and everything. Joel's much more, in a little bit more independent. He's 5, but he's a little bit more independent. So, I just made myself and taking care of myself a priority. And that's kind of where I've been. Like, I've been exercising. I've been trying to get more rest, drinking water, staying away and out of drama. Like, I have a very low tolerance for drama. So if like if you're bringing too much negative energy, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't do it right now. Like, honestly, that's how I've been the last couple months. Has really been about taking care of myself, because, like you said, I believe with Shameka, like, if we go get sick, right? If we're not taken care of, like, what happens? Like, what happens to our children, especially those, because I am his caregiver, like, things that he needs, like, he needs help with the bathroom still, like, making sure he eats and takes a bath and, all this stuff. Like, if I'm not able to do that for him, that hurts him as well. So I had to make myself a priority in this season. So
Yes, thanks for sharing that, Cherelle. And I just want you all to know who was watching. So you had Angela, who, her youngest son, who has cerebral palsy. He inspired her, and between his inspiration and their journey together, that's what motivated her to become the mental resilience coach. Shameka, Cherelle, and I, we're like already in, like, working as different kind of coaches, and then had to deal with like these new diagnoses. So like when Cherelle was talking about the conference, I remember Joel was a baby then. And she had him sitting on, she had him at the conference on her lap while we were doing our panel discussion. You can't tell me she wasn't looking like a mom. She's like, oh, you probably couldn't tell. I sure couldn't, and she was already a health coach. And I'm just saying that because I feel like sometimes when people look at the expert, you look at them like, oh, they're perfect, or oh, they already know what to do, so it's not bad for them. We're human. We are all human. And as you all know, with children, as they grow, things change too. So you have to transition sometimes. Sometimes something is working right now, and then tomorrow is not, or next month is not, and another year or whatever it's not. So yeah, the times will come where life gets overwhelming. I've dealt with anxiety. I'm actually seeing a therapist right now for my anxiety because that kind of spiked at the beginning of the year, trying to do a lot. Like Cherelle was saying, like you went back to school and it's like, I don't know why I did that. Sometimes we're trying to do so much because we do have these passions in ourselves. We have these things that the Lord is, directing us to do. But a lot of times we're still trying to figure out how to do it and without depleting ourselves. And a lot of times, I know for me, and I know you all can relate to it, and Cherelle mentioned it, it's like a lot of times you have to remember why you need to slow down and take care of yourself because they need us. Hey, dad might be there, but a lot of times that mama nurturing, we got all the T's crossed, I's dotted, and everything. And I know we're going to get back to Angela in a moment because Angela broke down like what she has her family do to help out, at home also. But like, yeah, they need you. They need you, mom. And like Shameka said, God knew what he was doing when he gave your child to you. So just like with Cherelle, like with the before he was born, they're already trying to encourage you, probably trying to push you to abort your child. But God knew what he was doing when he gave Joel to you. He has the right mom to support him, love him, help him to have a great quality of life. And, I feel like you knew that. It's like, look, I don't need to keep getting, all these different tests done. I'm going to have him regardless. Yes, you are fearing the unknown, sometimes mourning the unknown of, having, just like with Angela, like from birth, it's like, you're already thinking in advance, like, how's his life going to be? But with faith and still prioritizing your care so you can give him the best care as well, you're going to get through it. Having that faith, looking to God. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to keep on believing. He's going to guide me. We're going to get through this. And hey, mamas, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Shameka and Cherelle's children. Stay tuned to our next episode next week, where we will learn some takeaways and tools to help mamas who have children with special needs. Thank you for tuning in to the She is the Nourished Mom podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share with a mommy friend who needs to hear this message. Connect with me on social media at She is a Nourished Mom, and let me know your ahas and takeaways from this week's episode. Until next time, keep nourishing yourself, mama.